Good morning everybody and welcome to Rhyme of the Times for the week ending the 7th of October 2023. The world taken aback by Hamas's attack. The media pack make it tough for Sunak as HS2 goes off track. Truss is back to axe the attacks. In Scotland, Labour are back on track but SNP are on the rack. Fox is sacked. Rory Mac and his men get the Ryder Cup back. Rishi was determined to make sure he is seen as his own man, a special Tory. None of Johnson's political jackanory or Liz Truss's calamitous short story. He was seeking some Ryder Cup type glory, a victory inspiring performance just like Rory. But while McIlroy was rousing Europe in Rome, the PM on Sunday had reasons to groan. As the Tory conference in Manchester began, Rishi was a man in desperate need of a plan. And premonitions of possible bad stuff ahead turned out to be hitting the nail on the head. After 4 days, the only thing that seemed in the offing was a final nail in the Conservative coffin. Monday, Liz Truss spoke to a room full to the rafters. With last year in mind, she went after some afters, sniping at her successor, the current PM, banging on about economic growth again. She stood there brass-necked, standing no correction, receiving standing ovations from certain sections of the party in search of direction, throwing in the towel on next year's election. Then Suella Braverman's speech the next day warned of a hurricane of migration heading our way. Red meat to the right, apoplexy for the left, confusion for those in the middle who are left. The official party line was, "We are a broad church." From left to right of their church is one hell of a lurch. But the biggest question to answer for Sunak was in the background all week coming down the track. In fact, for several weeks it had been on its way. Was the HS2 train cancelled or just delayed? Should they shunt the northern leg into the sidings? The Tory insisted they were still deciding. So they all kept stum. The word was mum. In the PM's speech the announcement would come. And in the end, HS2 was the only thing heard. Everything else Rishi said was forgotten or blurred. Even his wife providing a surprise warm-up act failed to make much impact for Team Sunak. Like a Peters and Lee tribute rendition, a soft voice supplementing a guy with no vision. 'Cause no vision is what many think of the decision to scrap HS2's main northern division. The billions saved would be given like compensation for other transport projects in the north of the nation. Birmingham to Manchester may not have their new line, but there'd be upgrades all over the Pennines. Apart from the cost, Rishi tried to explain that post-COVID the landscape had changed for the trains. With working from home and Zoom more prevalent, HS2 would have become a white elephant. To have not reflected and come to our senses would have been an example of the old consensus. All people heard was HS2 hitting the buffers. For Rishi, it made the rest of his speech much tougher. His idea to ban smoking 1 year at a time with many Conservatives failed to chime. A bit nanny state and anti-libertine to patronise those addicted to nicotine. Perhaps a sign of modern society now is that Rishi only had the audience wowed when he defiantly made the outspoken stand that a woman's a woman and a man's a man. Around the country, no doubt many teenagers were shocked to hear words so hurtful and outrageous. The next day, UK politics focused north of the border, with what seemed like a significant step toward a Labour win in the next general election as Scotland hurtles in a new direction. The by-election in Rutherglen and Hamilton West points towards next year's Labour national success, because if the SNP's dead and Scotland turns red, Tory hopes for re-election get knocked on the head. The size of the win was seismic, said Sir Keir. A 20% swing from SNP made that clear. For Scottish Tories it was the complete opposite. 3.9% meant they lost their deposit. Lawrence Fox had a Wednesday he'd rather forget, sacked by GB News, then a visit from the Met. His Ava Evans rant had caused GB heebie-jeebies. His anti-ULEZ stance had attracted the busies. In Europe this week there was tragedy and menace. 20 died in a bus crash on the outskirts of Venice, while Putin had another sadistic fit and the village of Horoza near Kharkiv was hit. 52 civilians were killed by the attack. This was one of Putin's most degenerate acts. 6:30 a.m. on October 7 will go down as Israel's 9/11. 50 years since the start of the Yom Kippur War, Hamas decided to give Israel what for. What for? They'll say their surprise full-scale invasion was retaliation for Israel's occupation. Missiles and bullets by land, air and boats, Hamas went straight for the Israeli throats. They have supporters in the region, notably Iran. On Friday, ironically, just before this war began, an Iranian won the Nobel Peace Prize for her fight against her own country for suppressing women's rights. But Narges Mohammadi remains out of sight, jailed by the state. Now the world knows her plight. Tehran, in more ways than one, is in the spotlight.